Either they're way too supportive or they're way too negative. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my community show. Who needs professional singers when I got me, baby? Anyway, so welcome back to my community show. As always, I want to start off with our discussion about announcements, and so far I don't really have too many announcements other than one, I have ordered a uniform. And technically most of it's arrived already, but I have a uniform that I'm going to be wearing on the channel from now on, mostly because I get a little self-conscious about wearing the same shirt in every video. So naturally the option is, of course, wear the same shirt in every video. But only one. But apart from that, I also wanted to say that, sorry about this last week. It's been a little bit busy, and this next week, I don't know exactly how well it's going to go, but I'm going to do my best to pregame this week to make sure that I'm prepared for it. And additionally, I have started a TikTok. If you all are interested in it, I post basically just dad jokes and an occasional gaming clip that I've done on this channel here. And so the final outcome is going to be edited so that it fits in the formatting, but also doesn't look all weird and stuff. But apart from all that, working through Last of Us Part 2, getting close to the end, I think, considering how long the beat says it's only like 30 plus hours, and I'm 26 hours into it, so whatever. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the topic of the day. And now, I know I've addressed this before in the past, and I wanted to talk about it again, mostly because I want to see how much of it I still feel properly, and I haven't watched the video to alter my thoughts at all, but I want to talk about expanding fandoms.
But what does that mean, Stepsbasic? You're saying weird things. You're just smashing two words together and pretending that they work.
I know. But, no, see, we already know my take on fandoms and whatnot, and I have basically sworn off them. But bear in mind that this does not affect my opinion about the source material that creates the fandoms, i.e. I still very much love Dragon Ball Z, still very much love Star Wars, still very much love Ghostbusters, still very much love insert fandom here. Or I should say insert creative medium here. I just don't want to associate with the fandoms, mostly because while there are pluses and minuses, mostly it comes down to the fact that the fandoms tend to always err on the toxic side, which is something I don't really like. Either they're way too supportive or they're way too negative. Take, for instance, The Last of Us Part 2. Way too many... Well, that fandom in particular is split. Like, it's like way too supportive and way too negative about The Last of Us, and because of that, there's no room for middle ground, and as much as that can be a problem for not only the source material, the creators, etc., that's also a problem for people who just want to enjoy something. And so seeing this has to be positive, has to be negative opinion floating around there, it just kind of takes you out of enjoying the actual medium, which is why I don't like fandoms and I don't associate with them. But for the sake of this video, we're going to be talking in a broader sense, not so much in the idea of me being a part of fandoms, but the idea of a source material, insert source material here, whose user base / viewer base grows. Now, of course, the idea that prompted this came from Dungeons and Dragons, whereas when I was younger, it was very much taboo, very stupid, very basement dweller game to play. But through the years, it has progressed not only into the mainstream, but into the main, well, most people have a positive opinion about it. This is an interesting little thing. And for me, I've always thought of that as a good thing. Now, mind you, bear in mind that there are negatives to expanding a fandom or fan base, as it were, and I'll get into those in a moment. But for the most part, I've always liked the idea, like video games, Dungeons and Dragons, and reading in general, um, art, like morbidity and whatnot, and seeing those fan bases grow. I've always seen as a mostly good, a mostly positive thing, because for one thing, it not only breeds acceptance of your enjoyment of a hobby or a show or video, etc., etc. It also helps to well, make it easier to start conversations with people. Now, don't get me wrong. You go up to the average Joe and say, "Oh yeah, you seen this Doctor Who episode? You enjoy it? You know, one with the doctor's wife. Turns out it was pretty cool. I liked it." And the average Joe's gonna look at you like, "Huh? What? What's the Doctor Who?" Now, of course, I'm talking the U.S. as opposed to U.K., so things may be a little bit different. But, um, you know, if you strike up a conversation with somebody, you're rolling the dice to determine. Actually, sometimes it's more like flipping a coin, but you're basically taking a roll of the dice to see if this is going to be a conversation starter. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes they're like, "Oh my God, you like Supernatural too? My God, did you see the episode where they did the Scooby Doo's? Man, that was awesome." I'm like, "No, I actually haven't seen that episode. I kind of had to stop watching a little while ago, so I'm like 2 seasons behind now. But oh my God, dude, these next 2 seasons are gonna blow your mind." And then you got a potentially new friend here, and that's pretty cool. But that's the thing, when the fandom or the fan base starts to get larger, then the roll of the dice, instead of favoring like 1 to 3 as opposed to the other 17 numbers on the D20, it's the balance between what a good roll and a bad roll is, the difficulty check, if you will, starts to lean more in your favor. Like nowadays, if you find any random person of a slightly younger age than yourself and talk about Doctor Who, you're probably going to get to hear more about the Tennant and the Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi era. I haven't seen much after Peter Capaldi, sorry, but you'll start to see more of that, like people being like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." But then again, you start talking to people my age and older, you'll start to hear more about Tom Baker and whatnot. I like the older stuff. Mind you, Tennant was always my favorite Doctor. But anyway, and just seeing that expanding fan base means that it helps to bring people together. Of course, you still got to be aware of the toxicity prevalent in the "oh my God, I can't believe they did such and such to this and this." Like Hayden Christensen from Star Wars left Twitter and left the internet altogether because of how bad the fan base was to him. And friggin', I don't know if y'all know about this, but content warning, trigger warning, whatever you want to call it. The Steven Universe fan base, I will never associate with them, because of the simple fact that they drove somebody to suicide over a slightly thinner version of a person when they drew in fan art. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, this is why I don't like fan bases. Now that's one of the positives, not the fan base thing, but not the Steven Universe thing, but the fact that it helps to create conversations and whatnot. It helps to bring people together, and moreover, it helps to keep things going. Now, granted, I'll allow the fact that sometimes it brings things. It creates an atmosphere where they will drag a show on, or a movie or a game on, far too long, when it should have ended 3 seasons ago. Suddenly we have 5 new seasons in the works, and you're like, come on, man, let these people die already. Just let the show end. And so that does create a kind of a problem, but at the same time, it also helps to prevent it from ending too soon. Things like Sliders, I feel, could have benefited heavily from more seasons, maybe at least one more season. Now, at the same time, I also think that it should have ended a little bit sooner, but, since they got to where they did, they should have ended it maybe one season later, because I hated the way that ended. I loved the show, great show, and I loved all the actors who played parts in it. They did such beautiful show. Of course, towards the end, we only had two of the original characters left. Not even really two of the original characters. The only original character was Rembrandt, and it's like, wow, everyone else is just gone. Spoilers for the show that's over 2 decades old, by the way. It can end up dragging the show out farther than it should. Like, in a lot of cases, I think there shouldn't be more than 5 seasons at most of any television show. But then you get some shows that have survived 10 plus seasons, and you're like, wow, how is this still going? That doesn't mean I'm unhappy about it, like, especially with the Doctor Who stuff. If they'd have stopped after 3 seasons, or series, depending on where you are, if they'd have stopped after 3 of those, then we wouldn't have gotten my favorite Doctor. We wouldn't have gotten David Tennant and that. And so, yeah, sometimes it's for the better. But in general, I'd say that most television series, if you've got a story to tell, make sure to tell it in as many seasons as you need, but don't stretch it beyond where it should, because then it ends up just becoming boring, repetitive, and you end up seeing all the filler things like the Groundhog's Day episode or stuff like that. The tropes that you often see: body switching, Groundhog's Day, time travel, It's a Wonderful Life scenarios. You always see those tropes pop up. Shut up. In series that have outplayed themselves or outlived themselves. There's the acceptance, which makes it so that people don't think you're scummy for liking it. There's the wider appeal, generating conversations and whatnot, and then there's the help to breathe life into a show and keep it alive for as long as it needs to be. Those 3 are like some of my favorite ideas about expanding fan bases. So what are some of the negatives? Well, naturally, with anything of any sort, when it comes to expanding the fan base, it's easy to appeal to a small number of people. It's very easy to appeal to, like, if they're all the same people with the same tastes, i.e., all people who really like Dungeons and Dragons and just creating characters and going with it and delving deep in everything and figuring out what they're doing with everything, then it's very easy to appeal to them. But then when you start adding more people, it becomes more and more difficult to appeal to everybody and to make everybody happy. And of course, I've often said there's literally no way to make everybody happy. So you start to see changes that might affect the overall content of your show, game, series, etc. And we see things like, I'm a diehard 3rd edition fan in D&D. I still think that 3rd is the best edition. 4th sucked, but and then 5th, I'm coming around to it, but at the same time, there's still a lot of hand holding in it that I don't like, because it's like going back into 3rd edition, you can see a lot of the hand holding, and going further back, you see a lot of the hand loosening. You don't see very much in the 1st edition, Advanced D&D. You don't see a lot of that, and then it starts to get a little bit more convenient. And I think the height of imagination into the game itself and into the campaigns and the stories was at 3. And then after that, it just started getting a little bit too much in the way of, railroading and hand-holding of the characters. Admittedly, though, I've never been one to play pre-made campaigns. I've done it on occasions because, we just wanted to throw a quick game together. So, like, all right, here's a pre-made campaign, let's do this. But at the same time, I always edit the stories along the way because, well, I'm a writer. Have I told you yet that I'm a writer? So I always adjust stories to fit the campaign, to fit the characters, and sometimes the end result is not what we started with. Like if I started with the Fane of the Drow, we're ending with something completely different. Maybe we'll still have the Drow involved, but at the same time, you never know. And that's what's important to D&D to me. I feel like the freedom the freedom not only of your players to create what they want and be who they want is important, but it also requires a lot of freedom for the DM to control the world, because in most cases the DM is the determining factor in everything. I'm also a very loose player when it comes to the rules. Like, I will let my players do something that they think is feasible as long as they pass the proper difficulty checks. And that's what's important. And a lot of the times you'll see that sort of thing growing into it. It's like, oh, I love D&D. I love enjoying it. I love watching it. I love playing it. But it's a little hard. Is there any way you can make this a little better for me? I'm like, yeah, just talk to your DM. But let's have it in the rules. Let's make the rules change so that this isn't so difficult for me. No. Talk to your DM. Heck, write your own campaigns. Don't affect the overall game itself. That's the beautiful part about things like D&D is you got so much wiggle room. And unless you're going, of course, to play in like tournaments. Is there a tournament for D&D? I know there, like my local hobby shop down the street there hosts D&D games, but I wouldn't really call it a tournament. Mostly just a, hey, come play D&D with us. But at the same time, it's like, unless you're playing with like some sort of official set guidelines, like in some sort of a official capacity, you don't really need to worry so much about how things are structured and like whether or not the rule book says this is okay, because in the end the campaigns are all personal and geared towards you, so you shouldn't try to change anything. Like, heck, if you want your character to be, I don't know, dyslexic, your character could be dyslexic and you can roll difficulty checks against that and figure that out, whether or not the character's able to read something and stuff like that. You don't really have to change the overall core itself, because then you risk the idea of alienating your previous fans. And of course, this leads more toxicity within the fandom, where people who are like, oh, I'm old school, I want all this, I don't want you telling me what I can or can't do or whatnot. And then the new people are like, you're just jerks, you don't want us to play it, you just want us to go away. I'm like, no, I just don't want you to change my game. Again, don't associate with fandoms, they're insane. But that's my biggest like gripe about things, is you start to see things change. If you're going to join a fandom, if you're going to become a fan of something, then you should be a fan of that thing. You shouldn't be a fan only to the degree of where are they going to change it to fit my what I like. Like reading the Wheel of Time series, you can see the progression throughout the story of how better the writing style becomes, how better the author is at portraying their thoughts. But if suddenly, because the fandom demands it, you have super space ninjas jumping into the story, it's like, what the heck are we watching here? This isn't my story. Now, of course, that's a reductio ad absurdum argument, but just for example, you start to see things like that, and it's always subtle at first. Like, oh, can we write a rule for this? Oh, but then we need to write a rule for this, and now we need to write a rule for this and this and this and this and this and this. Now, that being said, I've played with some physically challenged people in my life when it comes to D&D, and I want to say that maybe this will make them feel better, but to be honest, none of them really wanted their disability represented in their character. With the exception possibly of one guy who played an old orc who had lost his legs in battle and had pegs installed, Yeah. But I'm always torn on changes like this, because I always think, like, what's the point? Like, on a lower level, for a beginner DM, there should also often be a lot of rules and stuff established so that you know what you're doing. So it's not just okay, this is what we're doing. Then it's like, well, no, you're kind of just screwing over your party here. You should probably look at the rule book and understand what you're doing before you start going off script. You know what I mean? I know what I mean. I hope you know what I mean. But it's like, I don't like fan bases. I don't like fandoms, because they think they have complete ownership. And it's not even just the fandom, the fan base, it's the individual fans who think they have complete ownership over an IP, a product, a story, what do you call it? And nothing shines worse than how badly the old school fans react to changes within the fan base. Like me, I flow with the punches. I'm a reed in the wind, as it were. I bend. I figure things out. I keep moving forward, and if it doesn't make sense to me, and like especially with D&D and stuff, then I can just move on with it. And at the same time, I'm still like, I'm happy to have more people who can enjoy what I enjoy, because that makes it so that I'm not feeling like I'm being judged harshly every time I say, yeah, I like to play D&D. It's awesome. I like to LARP. It's cool. I got swords and I can make armor and whatnot. I'm so cool, at least in my eyes. But at the same time, always you always gotta enjoy what you enjoy. Don't try to change what you enjoy just to make it, more fitting to your taste and mentality. It'd be like trying to, I don't know, make South Park PC because you want it to be more PC. Me personally, I haven't watched South Park in years, so I don't know. But anyway, apart from all that, that's gonna be it for me. I hope you figured out what I was trying to say, and I might go back to my other video and see what I said in there. And so this is kind of a memory test for me. But what are your thoughts on this whole situation of fandoms growing? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you want to see more of it? And do you try so hard but you can't rise above it, sort of thing? But anyway, let me know down in the comments down below. But apart from all that, that's going to be it for me for today. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of the Community Show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, just go and poke that like button for me. If you'd like to see more from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And of course, as always, you're more than welcome to leave a comment down in the comment section down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And then I can if I can. All that jazz. And tune in next time for Community Show topics. And until then, good night.